I really wanted a roof over the car before the snow, and we almost made it. But there was still much more to be done because we were planning a covered deck behind the carport, and that hasn't been started yet. As I've mentioned, I know the folly of trying to build in the Hakuba winter, but the ship had sailed, and that decision was out of my hands. Our builder, Shimokawa-san, was simply too busy to get our project done in the fall, and because he felt bad, I guess, and wanted to make good on his promise, he, and more notably our new head carpenter, Nakamura-san, planned to push through the winter. But before pressing forward, the covered deck that was to extend the length of the house would still have to be framed. But that actually happened pretty quickly because we could use pre-made concrete footings buried in the rocky soil. It was really just a question of digging out the hole, pulling out those rocks, adding some sand, getting them level, and then finally putting the rocks back into place. It probably took about a day, and then they were ready to start the framing. In about one more day, the frame was completed. Unfortunately, that frame was assembled on a day that I was out of town, and so I missed the whole thing. Even though I was only gone for a couple of days, the snow kept falling, and the family kept enjoying the snow while the workers kept working. Even though it was still basically just a frame, the addition of the blue metal roofing really made us see how the house was going to look when everything was completed. One extra additional thing we decided to do was finish the underside, the ceiling of the carport with cedar. And this really made a huge difference to the overall look of the carport. It was a bit more expensive, certainly, but it was well worth it. It just has a much more comfortable, completed look. Fortunately, the weather also held out pretty well for Nakamura-san to be able to assemble that ceiling piece by piece. It took a long time, and he was really careful. It looks beautiful, but it must have been tough to do in the winter. We were well into January now, and it was starting to get colder, and the real snow was certainly on the way. It was important for Nakamura-san to create a shelter and a makeshift workshop that he could work inside of as the temperatures got colder and as the snow kept coming down. After bracing the walls and putting the waterproof plastic on the outside and then the inside, he hung blue tarps between the walls in order to act as a shelter against the snow, the wind, and the cold. It worked pretty well, although it probably wasn't the most beautiful thing to look at, and our carport would be blue for most of the winter. But as you can see here, it wasn't a moment too soon because now the real snow was coming down in Hakuba, and it was about to get real. It was pretty real for the car too because it had to park outside the carport because now our carport was a workshop. At least during the day, the car was covered in snow. But honestly, in the end, it was a small price to pay for the quality of workmanship that we were getting from Nakamura-san. He was showing up basically alone every day, and he did every element of the build. He assembled every plank of the cedar ceiling, in the carport and on the deck. He painted the frame several coats so that it would look exactly like the house and so that it would be well protected against the weather. That took him a long time, but he was happy to do it, and it looked beautiful when he was finished. He was also responsible for putting together the deck boards themselves. He showed up every day for work, Monday through Friday, and occasionally even on Saturday, and unless it was too cold, he was out there working. If it was too cold, he'd go back to Shimokawa-san's headquarters to paint and prep the deck boards. In short, he was a rock star, and the deck and the carport were looking fantastic. He explained that the older guys had to be out there building the decks because the younger guys just didn't know how to do this kind of manual build. I don't know if that's true or not, but we were really happy to have Nakamura-san as our head carpenter and to work with Shimokawa-san again.